Hello everyone, this is Maruku, and welcome back to What If Deku Was a Werewolf. In the last part, Uraraka very generously took him in, and we'll continue from there. The next morning, Deku rose from his sleep, feeling something over his stomach. Not remembering where he was, he lifted his head and looked around, and then realized he's in an apartment. And that's when it all comes flooding back into his head. He remembers where he is now. So he turns his head and sees Uraraka very subtly cuddling into him. He could tell that she seems very, very happy having a very fluffy thing to hold on to. Like she's enjoying this way too much. But he puts that aside and he very carefully gets himself out of Uraraka's arms, being careful not to wake her up. He then starts to look around at the apartment again, remembering how the apartment doesn't seem to have a lot, obviously meaning that Uraraka must not be in the best situation. Though he does not completely understand why she is living in an apartment with so few things, he feels the need to give back in a sense, trying to, I guess, inside his heart he wants to do something for her as a way of, I guess, thanking her for her kindness and for taking him in when she didn't have to. Thinking himself as a monster, as usual. So, while Uraraka is sleeping, he carefully goes over to her apartment door and opens it. He makes sure to close it behind her himself and then starts making his way back down the stairs of the apartment, trying to remember exactly how to get back home. Usually he doesn't like to be roaming around during the day because vigilantes, heroes, everyone thinks of him as some creature of the hells beast. They want him out when all he's trying to do is just help. He can't bring himself to just sit back and watch as others get hurt. So he goes alleyway by alleyway, slowly making his way back to the forest. He finds himself very stuck. As he's walking through an alleyway, he looks around the corner and sees heroes patrolling the backways. Thinking on his feet, he quickly looks around and sees a fire escape, quickly jumping up a wall to reach it before scaling it. As he reached the rooftop of the apartment building that he was on, he saw the forest lining in the distance. Looking around to make sure that there aren't any heroes in the sky that can easily spot him, he takes a quick glance around, and seeing that the coast is clear for the most part, he begins jumping from the rooftop to rooftop to rooftop, all the way back towards the tree line of his forest. As he gets to the final building before reaching the tree line, he starts to wonder how he's going to bring all of this stuff back with him for Uraraka. Deciding that it's better to think about that when the issue arises, he jumps into a tree and before slowly scaling down it till he's able to get to the bottom of the tree. Finally getting his bearings on the forest, he looks around and figures out how to get back towards his cave where he keeps his treasures. Over the past 10 years, 10 years, he has amassed a very nice collection of items, riches, anything he can find off of villains, basically. He went into the cave and found his collection with as much tact as he can. He tries to basically take any kind of wrapping that he's also collected and carefully pour these treasures into into the wrappings, any bags he has, any kind of collection he could amass, he puts it in there. Though due to the fact that he's in a wolf form, technically, he doesn't have opposable thumbs or hands, so this is just the scaling of him using his mouth in order to generously scoop it into his mouth and then into the bags. As soon as he has collected a nice amount, he scoops most of it around his back and is able to secure it with a couple things around his neck as well before leaving the cave. Now, while Deku is heading back, we're going to switch to Uraraka's perspective and cover that. So, back in the apartment with Uraraka, she slowly begins to stir as she realizes that the sensation of fur that she had fallen asleep on the day before was no longer in her arms. She opened her eyes and realized that he wasn't there. She looked around, noticing he wasn't anywhere in the apartment with her. She figured that maybe he had decided to leave, decided that he didn't want to stay with her, decided that he wanted to be on his own instead. This made her feel a bit sad. She wanted to help him. She wanted to offer him some kind of home, some kind of support, love, compassion that he obviously hasn't experienced before. With as much as she has put into the idea of being what he needs, him not being there leaves her feeling unable to be of service at all. Like, she couldn't even help someone who has been through a lot. Granted, she doesn't know his entire story, but she knows that he doesn't have a mom anymore, and that he's just a poor boy with a quirk that makes him out to be some kind of feral beast. She feels that it's unfair that he has to live like that. She gets up, goes to her bathroom, and tidies herself up before going over to her icebox and getting whatever is available or possible for her to eat, that being a bowl of cereal, before sitting down and turning on the tiny TV she has. She sits on her bed eating the cereal as she watches it, flipping from channel to channel. Then she sees a news heading. It speaks of something that she'd heard of but never put much merit into. The story is about a creature that has been plaguing the city for around 10 years, called the Hound of Hell, or the Nightmare Hound, that people are calling it. And they finally have a description for the creature. In most cases, people don't remember what it looks like because either it was hunting from the darkness or it just never really showed itself in the light. But they have a description of the creature now. This piques Uraraka's interest because she's always wondered what this creature is supposed to be. And that's when her blood ran cold. The Nightmare Hound itself was described to be a giant green wolf with piercing dark green eyes. She was frozen at this revelation that the wolf boy that she had brought into her apartment was supposed to be this evil creature that slaughtered any who committed a crime, ruthless in its pursuit, killing all those who crossed its path. A creature of legend that is said that if you cross its path, there is no escaping it. It will hunt you down, and you will not see the light of day again. She was frozen at this. Her stomach hurt. Her arms, they shook. Everything inside of her told her that she had gotten away with her life intact by some miracle, but another part of her said and felt angry at these reporters, these vultures that demonize him, calling him a hound of hell, a nightmare beast, a creature that kills all in its path. She felt that they had no right to label him as such, that they had no right to treat him like he didn't deserve to live, like he was some nuisance. It made her angry to think that they treated him so poorly. Granted, he was not a licensed hero, more like a vigilante with the intent to kill, but still, she believed that if it wasn't for him taking care of that crook that attacked her from her doorway and the fiend who tried to take advantage of her in the alleyway, that she wouldn't be there. That it's only because of him that she's alive at all. It's only because of him that she still breathes. She was angry that society had labeled him as something horrendous, something awful. Now she wanted to help him more than ever. She wanted to go out and find him again. Find him and convince him to stay this time. She felt like she wasn't enough to convince him that he was allowed to want to live. She felt like she had to be better in order to help him better. She wanted nothing more than to give him a better life. After eating, she quickly got dressed as fast as she could to go look for him, desperate. As soon as she got her shoes on, she started to make her way towards her door when she heard a noise akin to scratching at the door. Pausing, she was confused at this turn of events. She wondered why there was scratching at her door. Or, to be more precise, what could be doing it? She didn't think that it was Izuku because she didn't expect him to have come back. She didn't think that he would return like that. But to her surprise, when she opened the door, there he was, covered from back all the way down his back to around his neck with bags, she supposed. She was curious as to why he had bags on him, or an assortment of cloths wrapped with wrapping around them. She was happy to see him, but confused at the same time. She quickly let him in, telling him that she was worried that he had left her behind and that she's so happy that he came back. Izuku, having basically flopped all the bags and assortment off of him onto the side of the door, he smiled and very, I'd say, while struggling, said, "Why I leave you nice to me. I go to repay you." Uraka, while still trying to figure this out, exactly what he meant, she looked at the bags and looked back at him. Then she asked, "Are these for me?" Deku, while wagging his tail happily, he shook his head ferociously to tell her yes, that they are for her. She was surprised. She didn't expect him to come bearing gifts. But she wasn't sure if she should take this gift, even though not knowing what it was, because she felt like she hasn't done anything for him yet. Like, him repaying her was not really equivalent exchange. He only stayed in her apartment one night. Now, there was nothing to repay there. But him kind of figuring out what she was thinking, he looked at her and said, "You the only person who nice to me. You show me great happiness, belonging, hope that people may accept me." Uraka definitely figured out she needs to teach this boy how to speak properly. Though figuring out that he is the Hound of Nightmares, it's no wonder he doesn't talk a lot or really remember how to speak properly. So she reluctantly just surrenders and asks him what's in the bags. And Deku looks at her and simply tells her, "It treasure I collect from bad people. I give you my treasure. I help you. I notice you not have a lot. Like me. I have no use for treasure. I only collect. Now I give to you." Uraraka was touched that he would give her his treasure. Granted, she still didn't know what was in the bags, but still. And feeling very, very emotional from having been given such a gift, she reached out and pet him behind the ears, telling him that he owes her nothing and that she was happy to help him. This made Deku smile, a true, genuine smile. He tells her, "I still give to you my treasure." Finally deciding to see what this supposed treasure is, she moves over to the copious amount of bags that Deku had carried on him, and she barely opens the first bag before quickly closing it and throwing it halfway across the room. As she starts to back away, freaking out, she looks at Deku and says, That's real treasure. That's money. That's valuables. How do you have this?" Deku says, "Like I say, I take from bad people. I collect from bad people." Uraraka was shooketh at this. She wasn't sure what to say. She wasn't sure what to do. She was just kind of hyperventilating, I guess. Unsure whether to be happy that now she has a copious amount of money, or to be very, very worried that someone is going to hunt her down for having such treasures. Granted, she doesn't know exactly where they came from, but still. All she knows is that he took them from bad people, apparently. Now, she kind of is flipping out that now she has all this acquired wealth, I'll say, and doesn't know exactly what to do about this turn of events, whether to be very, very happy, very, very shocked, or just outright bewildered. Hell, she's not even sure if she should be if she needs to keep it or take it to the police. Granted, she's not going to turn down a very generous gift from a boy who has issues and who she's trying to treat like a person. She doesn't want to hurt his feelings either, and if I'm being honest, I would have gladly kept it. So she accepts the gift and tells him that from now on he shouldn't be taking treasures from bad people, and he understands that she doesn't approve, but that she will still take his gift just to be nice. He understands that much. So they spend a little while talking, Uraraka trying to understand more of why Deku is like this, or exactly what's going on. And that's when she realizes that she doesn't actually know his name. And she actually finally asks him what his name is. Izuku doesn't remember much. Like I said, he has been by himself for 10 years, so his memories are very hazy, but he remembers the name Izuku, and he remembers the word Deku. And he tells her this before she then also introduces herself as Ochako Uraraka. Now, being on the understanding of each other's names, Uraraka tries to kinda figure out what she wants to do to help him. She comes up with the fact that she might want to teach him how to speak again, properly at least. So, for the next couple of days, she goes through and tries to teach him how to speak, with him slowly getting better at it. Though the days where it's like a normal day, she obviously goes to school, and Deku is usually left by himself in the apartment to wait for her, like a loyal little puppy. And when she gets home from school is when she'll teach him how to talk better. This pattern would reoccur for about another month or so, with them being in this same dynamic, but obviously Uraraka has essentially taken all these treasures and put them in her closet in like a very safe portion in order to keep it from being stolen or like anything else, and she only really pulls out of it every so often whenever she needs to get something for her and Deku. Now, up to this point, it's about like maybe a month and a quarter since they first met. And that's when Uraraka decides that she wants to effectively figure out exactly what Deku's quirk is. She wants to help him control it better. So she asks Deku exactly what his quirk is. Deku, not knowing exactly how to explain it, he tells her that all he knows is that he is a wolf. That he used to be human, but that now he is a wolf. And that he doesn't know how to control it properly. Uraraka starts to ponder this. Starts to go over what she knows about quirks from a basic standpoint. Obviously, Deku is also very intelligent and knows a lot about quirks. He knows that his quirk is a transformation type. That he obviously has the ability to transform, but he doesn't know how to control it. So, Uraraka, in her best attempt to try and help him, asks him to take her to where he used to live in order for training. And Deku, obviously, since he doesn't want to do this during the day, and I'm gonna say it's maybe around like winter at this point, like so Uraraka should be able to like spend winter break with Deku, being able to like I'll say to train his quirk. So he shows her exactly where he used to live. He shows her the cave. And this makes her heart heavy, having to realize that he lived in this cave for a long time. For 10 years, essentially. But she's determined to teach him how to control his powers. So she takes him to the cave, and she asks him to essentially try and like feel his, like try and like feel the quirk within his body and see if he can like manipulate it in some form. We're going to change to Deku's perspective for a better description of how it feels for him. Deku very consciously tries to feel inside of himself for the power. He feels himself as himself. He feels this sensation through his body, like power, primordial, ancient, strong. Like the ability to just give into primal urges. The sensation to want to be free, like a wolf, obviously. But he tries to regulate this power, tries to make it work in his favor, make it work, bend to his will. And he imagines the power lessening, like pushing the beast inside of him away, trying to create a new him. And as Uraraka is sitting there watching him, she sees his body change in different ways. Watches as his arms seem to lengthen. See as his back begins to bend and shift. Sees as how he appears to be becoming more bipedal, and watches as his arms or paws become more human-like, making him look like a traditional werewolf. Deku, on the other hand, he feels himself change. He feels the power within his body shifting around as he tries to suppress it and change its form. When he opens his eyes, he looks at his hands and they look human, but he still has attributes of a wolf. He looks at Uraraka, and Uraraka looks happy. She looks amazed at the fact that he's able to control his power to some degree, that he's able to use it to such a degree. This hybrid form of man and wolf. She runs up to him and jumps on him, hugging him real tight, saying that he did it, that she knew he could do it, and that she believed in him. This made Deku happy to hear that she believed in him so much. He wrapped his arms around her, being careful not to hurt her with his claws. And that's when he takes in a deep breath, and the Midoriya factor of beginning to cry begins to happen. He starts bawling his eyes out in happiness. After having gone through such suffering, he's able to finally, he feels that he's able to have a foothold on his powers. Like he's finally able to make a difference with himself. That he can finally be a hero like he wants. That he doesn't have to run anymore. That as soon as he's able to take control of his quirk 100%, that he'll finally be free of his prejudice of evil that everyone labels him as. Uraraka starts jumping up and down after breaking the hug and asking him if he can push it further to turn back into a human. He does this. He's really excited to see if he can. And as he imagines pushing the rest of the primal urge, or pushing the rest of the beast out, he feels himself changing again. He feels as his arms seem to change in shape, feels the hair recede from his arms, feels the claws go back within himself. He feels as his face begins to change back into that of a human, before eventually having feeling the tail go back and feeling human again. That is before Uraraka lets out a very subtle yelp, a very high-pitched yelp, before he opens his eyes and sees that he's back to being human again. And seeing that Uraraka has effectively turned away from him and appears to be embarrassed for some reason. He walks up to her and asks her what's the matter. And she yelps again as a squeak escapes her lips as he puts his hand on her shoulder. And as she musters up the courage to speak, she tells him, Deku, you're, you're not, you weren't lying about being a boy. This confuses Deku. He doesn't quite understand what she means. And Uraraka says, Deku, you're kind of not wearing any clothes. And that's when Deku comes to the final realization of what she's referring to, as he looks down and realizes, indeed, he isn't wearing any clothes, and when he turned back into a human, Uraraka got an eyeful of him, of what he's working with, and that's why she squeaked. He still also having been like a wolf for a very long time, he doesn't like completely have that shame anymore, like what he would if he was a normal boy. He doesn't have that type of shame. So he asks her what's wrong, what's the matter with him being like this, and she turns even more red and is just slowly trying to walk away and or face away from him, before she kind of says that he really needs to get some clothes on before she can look at him again. And he asks her if how he's supposed to put clothes on when they didn't exactly bring any for him. That's when she turns around and says, well, how am I supposed to know before having looked at him again and spun back around to not look away, with her face being as beet red as possible, before he comes up with the solution that would probably be the best for now. He turns back into his wolf form and tells her that he's not human anymore, that he went back to being a wolf before she sighs in relief and turns around to see the fluffy little bean that is Midoriya at the moment. Uraraka's head is flowing with many constructs, many very, very elaborate constructs. She's pondering her life decisions. She's going through existential crises. She also believes that she desperately needs to get this boy some clothes. Otherwise, she's not going to be able to keep herself sane. That the only way that she'll be able to keep herself sane is to have him wear clothes so that she has a new image of him in her head that's not stuck there at the moment. So she quickly tells him to go back to the apartment while she goes to go find stuff in his size for him to wear. So he obliges. He goes back to the apartment, and Uraraka finds her way back into the city, then goes into a clothing store to go find some clothes in Deku's size. At this point, she's having another existential crisis because she doesn't know exactly what his size is. So she has to think about what he looked like to figure out his sizes, leaving her with another predicament, keeping her very, very flustered and very unhappy, I guess you could say, having to go through this. She's very happy that she has the money as payback now. That's what she's thinking, that this is an equivalent exchange for what she's being put through. So she basically gets him a fair amount of clothes. She gets him, I'll say, 3 t-shirts, 2 pairs of pants, some sleepwear, and she gets him some briefs as well, before taking it back to her apartment, where she enters and finds I'll say, dripping, wet Izuku in his human form, walking out of the bathroom with a towel in his hair, but nowhere else, leading for her to scream again. And this startles him because he wasn't expecting her to scream, and he asks her again, why is she screaming over him, just being in human form? She yells back, because it's not proper for him to be exposed. So he reluctantly just agrees and takes the clothes from her before going back into the bathroom to put them on, which takes him a minute because he has to remember how to put them on. Uraraka is sitting on her bed just questioning her life decisions at the moment. Questioning how the hell she's going to get through the night with him being around and not exactly having a lot of social courtesy, I guess you could say. Like he doesn't understand like any of the whole embarrassment thing, and how she's going to deal with having him around like that, because she's got a lot of thoughts in her head, a lot of different conspiring ideas of how much she would love to have her head pressed up against his rock-hard, chiseled chest and just to fall asleep within his arms before she quickly shakes herself out of her musings and in embarrassed fluster begins to freak out at her line of thinking. She can't help but think of how he has a very, very toned body, and how obviously she can't. How obviously being the semi-murderer of a vigilante who is known for being unmerciful to those who commit crimes while he's around, all the movement he does as a wolf obviously has made him very, very ripped, very chiseled. And she likes that a lot. That's when he comes out and she realizes that maybe the shirt was a bit too small on him, because it's skin tight and she is having every thought in her head scream, "No. How can he be this attractive?" she screams in her head, before he looks at her and asks what's the problem. That she's still beet red even though he's wearing clothes, and how is this any different from when he wasn't? She says that it's not a problem and that she's just thinking about different stuff. So, well, I've turned this into a comedic thing. Okay, so that is when she basically tells him that he is not allowed to be walking around her apartment in his birthday suit, and that it is required for him to be walking around clothed when he's in human form. Deku shrugs his arms and just surrenders the concept and just says, whatever. As long as I get to walk around and not feel like a ridiculed beast, I'm happy. So, effectively, Uraraka has had plenty of excitement for the day and wishes to just kind of pretend like nothing that she saw today was seen, and hopefully have good dreams that night without any issues. Oh, I'm bad. Okay, so from there, we're going to skip about, I'll say, another 3 months with Uraraka teaching him how to properly communicate and teaching him social etiquette. Teaching him that, like, how to address people, how to, like, interact with others, and basically reteaching him how to just be a basic human being that doesn't constantly feel like shunned, I guess, by the world. Like, trying to reinstate him into society, I guess. Though on the other hand, she wouldn't complain if he decided that he didn't want to be a part of the normal world and basically wanted to stay with her as his as his only friend, and basically had him all to herself. She wouldn't have a problem with that, honestly. She would much enjoy that, especially with how she's grown to know him, to know how he behaves, with how he sees the world, with how he feels as she lays her head on his chest. Oh, horrible. So they work together on the weekends as well to learn how to improve their quirks, basically, so that, because both of them want to be heroes. Now, this would lead to both Uraraka and Deku training at his cave on how to use their quirks. Deku would basically use his hybrid form as a way of learning how to fight with like a like bipedally with his hands, and with martial arts, kind of like self-taught, and Uraraka would spend her time trying to work on her zero gravity abilities. Deku was impressed with her ability to basically make things weightless. Like, he found the quirk very interesting. Because remember, he's still the same Deku. He's still interested in quirks, how they work, and analyzing them. The only difference is that he doesn't have his notebook, so he jots down the analysis in his own head, making him basically like a quirk supercomputer, where he's able to catalog quirks in his head, figure out how they work, due to him basically having to deal with criminals that have quirks on a regular basis, and having to quickly analyze how the quirk works and the best ways to counteract it with his wolf form. This would not say that Uraraka does not also partake in martial arts with him, so that they both know how it works and they both equally benefit from it. He teaches her a little bit of fighting, and she and him both work on how to maximize proficiency with their quirks. He helps her to find objects that are heavy so that she can increase her limits, and she helps him to basically understand different fighting forms while being on his back two legs in his hybrid form, basically fighting like a human, just with wolf attributes, I guess. Deku quickly becomes very, very good at transforming. He's able to switch between forms a lot faster than when him and Uraraka discovered that he could in the first place. To shift between forms only takes about a good, I'll say, 3 seconds. It takes 3 seconds to switch between his forms. Though, he has found that on nights with a full moon, his powers are enhanced, I'll say. That they're boosted by a very large amount. He noticed this while he lived in the forest for the 10 years, that he would have strange bursts of strength during the full moons, but he never really put a lot of merit into it. Uraraka basically helped him to understand that maybe that he draws his powers from the moon, almost like a stockpiler. If he doesn't use his powers but absorbs energy from the moon, maybe he could stockpile it inside of his body, and that maybe there are other ways for him to gain energy for his powers. So they do a lot of experimentation to figure out whether he can gain powers from other stuff besides just the moon. And what they discovered is that basically if he ingests meat, or more specifically bloody meat, kinda, that it also improves his abilities while using his quirk. And that he's able to basically use his quirk to also multiply his strength. That when he's in his human form, that he's obviously very strong, he's very built, he has a lot of muscle, but that in his hybrid and full werewolf form, that it gives him strength boosts. In his hybrid form, it gives him I'll say 5 times strength boost, but in his full wolf form, it gives him a 10 boost. So it's like a multiplier. His strength in each form has a multiplier, and then with the moon and with bloody meat or meat in general, it can adjust his strength to be stronger. So him and Uraraka go over different ways to incorporate these into his abilities, and incorporate different ways to have enhancers on him whenever he's fighting. After, I'll say, about another 5 months of them training together and getting to enhance their hand-to-hand combat, their quirk abilities, and experimenting on both ends to figure out exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are, they both feel confident about trying to apply for UA. Though, obviously, for Deku's case, he hasn't exactly been in school, so the only way that he'll get in is if he's able to do online school, which technically ever since maybe a couple months from being with Uraraka, and obviously them having that very large amount of wealth from Deku's collection of treasures, he has been basically doing online courses in order to further his education in different fields. And because of him being incredibly smart, even though he's been living as a wolf since maybe he was 5 or so, he has been able to essentially grow knowledge in different ways over time. And that being a werewolf also enhances his cognitive abilities, so he's able to learn very quickly. His brain functions a lot higher than most because of the enhancements from his werewolf forms. So while doing his courses, he's able to quickly gain his education so that he's up to the same point as Uraraka. And Uraraka could not be the happier that he's able to learn so quickly. And by the time that he gets to the same education level as Uraraka, that's where it kind of caps up a bit, to where the harder concepts are not as easy to him as the lower concepts like basic math and basic science, but he's able to learn very fast still. So up to the point where they're getting toward he's at the end of middle school level education, him and Uraraka study a lot in order to help him get to the end, to exactly where she is at the same point. He has to do a lot of stuff. Technically, he has to do something while Uraraka's away, doesn't he? So, by the time that Deku turns, I'll say, 16, and has maybe about 3, a year before the UA exams, is where we're at, right? So, Deku, while going on a leisurely walk with Uraraka, celebrating his quick education so that they can both attend UA, Deku starts to basically take her out, and they're walking the street going toward Digba Beach because of the fact that there's a place where he likes to basically go around that general area that he wants to take Uraraka to. And as they're passing by the beach, Uraraka looks at him and tells him that it's a shame that the beach got this bad, because according to her parents, that they had told her that it used to be very beautiful a long time ago, and Deku wanted to make her happy. He wanted to do something that would surprise her. So he decided that he, by himself, would come out and would clean up the beach to surprise her before the UA exam. He wanted to take her to the beach as a date, because over the time that he spent with her, he's begun to develop feelings for her very slowly and steadily, and he just doesn't want to. He hasn't gathered the courage in order to tell her how he feels. So after some long consideration, he decides to himself that he wants to clean up the beach, but that he's going to have to do it while Uraraka is out. So after they go on their walk for exercise reasons and for also going to pick up groceries, he basically makes a plan to himself on how he's supposed to clean up the beach, which he mentally writes down in his head as an accomplishment that he wants to do and how he wants to effectively go about it. So the next day he waits till Uraraka has left her apartment to go to her classes. As soon as she leaves, he gets himself some moderate exercise clothes on and decides to run down to the beach and try to clean it up. He decides that he wants to start with the big stuff first in order to get the bigger issues out of the way, and then slowly make his way down to the smaller things. So, while it's still very early in the morning, just before the sun even has risen up, he turns into his hybrid form, and he lifts a refrigerator over his head. And the refrigerator isn't all too heavy, but he feels that it shouldn't be that hard to move these objects. So he takes it over to a dumpster and he places it in there. Then he realizes maybe he should do it in his base form so that whenever he goes into his hybrid and full form, it multiplies his base strength instead of just trying to do it the easy way. He thinks of it as a bit of training as well, and that excites him a bit. So he would basically he would use his hybrid form to do the overly heavy stuff until light starts to peak over the horizon, and then he would go into his base form and do it that way. Now, it was a lot heavier to carry stuff in his base form now, but that just excited him because he knew that he would feel all the more rewarding from doing it with his base power. So he basically goes and picks up tires and refrigerators, radiators, heaters, and he hauls it to the dumpster. Then he goes and finds the smaller stuff that's closer to the water and starts scooping it up into a bag that he had brought with him that morning, and he starts to scoop it from close to the water so that it doesn't go into the actual ocean itself. As soon as the line closest to the water is cleaned up, he takes the bag over to the dumpster and throws it in. Then he decides that he should probably get some other big stuff and toss it up there too. So he gets over to the pile and he finds himself, a couple washers, a couple dryers, and even a sink, which he thinks that it's very, very dumb how people are just throwing all this garbage over here. He doesn't even understand why people would feel the need to throw all this over here. He's disappointed that people would just dump all their trash in such a supposedly beautiful area. Nevertheless, he's determined to clean up the beach, determined to restore it to its former glory. So, he basically goes and finds as many bags as he can from the stuff that he brought, and he takes as many away from the shoreline as possible, accounting for how the water will rise. He pushes the trash back to a safe distance away from the water so that it will not be swept away into the ocean. Before going back to the heavier things, as he watches the garbage truck come and take away his day's worth of work, he feels accomplished. He feels satisfied. He's happy that it's working out and that at the progress he's made. It's not going to be easy, but he knew that cleaning up the beach would not be something that could be done overnight. And since it was getting close to the time where Uraraka would be home, he went and he got himself an easy to buy to go bento before running back to the apartment, playing it off like he maybe went for a walk before going back. Uraraka, when she returned to the apartment, she saw him sitting on one of the beds and just watching TV, watching the news. And she knew that he would go from time to time out on patrols to see if he could find any not so savory people in the area, trying to make sure that the general area around Uraraka's apartment stayed crime-free to protect the both of them, especially her. On some days when he would get a very bad feeling, he would walk with Uraraka to her school just to make sure she was safe before then walking to the beach to clean it up more. This would go on for a good, I'll say 5 months is how long it took him to clean up the entire beach. He felt accomplished. He felt successful. He felt proud of himself that he was able to accomplish so much. He was able to clean up the entire beach, and as he watched the garbage truck take the last load of garbage, he basically walked to the shoreline and felt the water and sand under his feet as he looked over into the horizon. He thought to himself, this really was a very beautiful sight. He was just very, very sad that it had to have come to such a degree of trash, filth, and he didn't understand why people felt the need to soil such a beautiful spot. So he had went to the store and he got himself the perfect ensemble of picnic items. He got the basket, he got the throw over towel for them to sit on, he got some sodas and a umbrella. And once Uraka had gotten back, he had essentially told her that he had plans for the day and that he wanted to ask if she would like to join him. Uraka, being very, very accommodating, didn't want to upset at Deku and make him feel like she didn't want to spend time with him, so she did. She got ready, and Deku had warned her that she might want to wear something that she wouldn't mind getting wet. This puzzled her. She didn't understand exactly why he wanted her to wear clothes that she wouldn't mind getting wet, but she shrugged her shoulders and just followed instruction. As soon as she was ready, Deku had taken her by the hand and told her that he was going to take her somewhere that he thought that she'd like. Uraka, just wanting to humor Deku and have some fun with him, basically decided that she'd go along with his little plan. After walking for a bit, he told her that he needed her to close her eyes. Just before they got to the area where you could begin to see the beach. She asked him why, but he said that he got a surprise for her. And as she closed her eyes, he scooped her up into a bridal carry, and she started to freak out, asking him what he's doing, and asking him to put her down because she thought she was too heavy for him. He told her that it's not a problem and that she's not that heavy, that she's rather light, and she just kind of gave up and let him do as he wanted. So he carries her until they get to the steps that lead to the beach, and he puts her down, leads her over to the rails, and she asks him if she can open her eyes yet. He tells her that she can, and she does. Before her is a beautiful sight. The sun in the horizon just over the water. The beach as clean as it can get. The sand looked like it almost shimmered at the view. It almost looked like golden sand with how clean it was. She was astonished at the sounds of the waves crashing over into the sand. The gentle breeze, the fresh air, she took it all in, amazed at this sight. She turned to Deku and asked him, "When did the beach get cleaned?" He looked at her and smiled and said, "I cleaned the beach. I finished just this morning." She looked over to him and was surprised to hear what he said. She was surprised to hear that that he had cleaned the entire beach for her. She told him that he didn't have to do that, but he told her that it wasn't a problem, that he wanted to see the look on her face when he had successfully cleaned the beach for her. She was touched at his gesture, was happy that he went through all the trouble just for her. Nevertheless, they walked down to the beach and he laid out the towel and the umbrella and set down the picnic basket with an assortment of bento boxes and sandwiches, and drinks as well. She was so touched that he went through all the trouble just for her. She told him thank you, and that she appreciated him doing this for her, but that he didn't have to. Deku told her that he knew he didn't have to, but that he wanted to. That he wanted to do this for her. And Uraraka was touched at his display. It made her very happy. It made her feel special, important, even. So, they sat down and they watched the waves. Deku and her ate sandwiches and drank drinks, talking all the while. When Deku was able to finally muster up the courage, he began to speak. Uraraka, when you found me, I wasn't in the best place. I felt alone, scared even. I wasn't sure if what I was doing was the right thing anymore. I just wanted to help people, keep people safe. I wanted to be a hero all my life, but when my mom abandoned me, I felt like a freak. I tried to help people, but they called me a monster. You're the first person who ever saw me as a person. You're the first person to treat me with such compassion, such kindness, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Uraraka smiled at his words and was happy to hear that he thought so highly of her. So, he continued. I was very appreciative of the fact that you took me in, took care of me, when I was just a stranger that you didn't even know. Over these months to a year that I've been with you, I've never felt more important in my life. You made me feel important. You made me feel special, wanted. And for that, I cannot express how happy I am that I got to meet you, Uraraka. I cannot accurately express exactly how important you are to me. With all the strength that he could in his heart, he mustered up every ounce of courage to say the next part. Uraraka, for the longest time, ever since I've met you, I've had this feeling in my chest that has slowly grown over time, slowly built and burned hotter and hotter, like a flame, like an inferno. Over time, it's gotten bigger. It hasn't faded once. And I really, he begins to struggle to say the next part out, but as he starts to build more courage, he's able to finally say it to a better extent, just in his own little way. Ochako Uraraka, will you be my beta? Uraraka kinda has a hard time understanding what the hell he just asked her, in a sense, because she doesn't understand the term. And then she tilts her head and says, beta? Deku visibly burns in the face at this fact that he said beta instinctively. He gathers the rest of his courage and he says, what I meant to say was, will you be my girl? Uraka pauses for a second, thinking about what he just asked her, pondering on all the time that she spent with him, all the time that she's had with him, growing closer to him, being with him, taking care of him and him taking care of her. Her heart knows the answer. She's known that she's loved him for the longest time. And hearing him say it to her, that he feels the same way, she feels like she's on cloud 9. Like she's about to start soaring through the skies into the clouds. She tackles him and hugs him real tight, telling him, yes, yes, I will be your girlfriend. He wraps his arms around her and holds her tight. He visibly breathes a sigh of relief. Then she looks him dead in the eyes and tells him, if you think that I was going to let you be taken by another girl, you had another thing coming. You were mine for the longest time now. I was not going to let another one take you away from me, Deku. You're mine. Now it's just official. I've known that I was going to keep you for a very long time. At least since I've seen your human form, at least. A lot of prospect there that I'm not gonna let go of. Especially your very toned body. Is what she told him. He began to turn red at the mention of the fact that she loves to snuggle into his chest at night, specifically. Though the first part of the sentence he has obviously now understands exactly the reason why she had a problem with him when he first attained his human form. And the first part of that sentence that she said, it turned him crimson. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't fathom. He was dead on the inside. There was no reviving him. He was utterly destroyed from embarrassment. She utterly destroyed him. Though, granted, he doesn't mind. As apart from the fact that technically he also has seen plenty of her. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not even gonna continue that thought line. Anyway, so he pulls her in close and gives her a kiss before pulling away and telling her that she is his new treasure, that he will vow to take care of her for the longest time, vowing that he will be there for her when she needs him, and that they will both become great heroes together, before embracing in a final hug, absorbing the other's presence, taking in as much time as they can in each other's arms. And that right there is where we're going to leave part 2. I hope you all enjoyed. And don't forget, the shadows are watching.